Hi, and welcome to The Bright Balloon, a podcast where I'm sharing bright ideas for your balloon business. My name is Sarah Meyer, and I'm a balloon business owner like you, and I love the creative side of what I do, but I really love the business side, which seems to be the part where most people struggle. So I'm here to help. Each week, I'm bringing you an episode full of bite-sized tips you can use to make tiny improvements to your business. I want you to make more money, eliminate stress, and learn along with me as we grow our creative businesses together. Welcome to The Bright Balloon. Hello and welcome to this episode. Today is going to be our first episode where I am going to do a book review. And it's not as much of a review as it is a Cliff's Notes version of the book, some highlights, and then I'm going to strongly recommend that you go out and buy your own copy. And if you have been listening for a while, you might remember that I said I was going to do these every month, and that didn't actually happen in January, but I have a reason why. I'm going to tell you all about the book that I started reading in January and why I abandoned it. So today we are going to focus on Chillpreneur, which is a book by Denise Duffield-Thomas. And I have already referenced Denise several times in episodes because after reading this book, I went on a Denise Duffield-Thomas spiral. Like, I listened to all of her podcast episodes. I read all 3 of her books. I follow her blogs, and I did like a video workshop. And I love this woman. I think everything that she says I connect with. I just really relate to her. So there might be another book review, one of her other ones. But today we're focusing on Chillpreneur, which was my gateway drug into Denise Duffield-Thomas. Before we talk about the book, though, I want to talk about January and the book that I planned on reading. So it was a book called Traction, and it was about numbers tracking, which I'm really into this year. And as I started reading it, I noticed it was just like, after one day I had read like a page. After 2 days, I had read the same page again. After 3 days, I really tried to buckle down and read this book. And finally, I just had to admit defeat. Like, it just wasn't for me. It was a good book. I actually recommended it to a couple other people. But in doing so, I realized that the people I was recommending it to have large teams. And I think that's what it was. It was about building like a company-wide idea and direction and building morale and having everyone on the same page. And when it's just me, it was hard to apply some of those things. Like, one example was call a meeting with your entire leadership team. And I was like, okay, well, that's just me. So like, I don't need this whole chapter because I don't need to get my leadership team on the same page. It's just me. And that just kept happening over and over. And I realized that like all of this bigger business stuff, it just like wasn't appealing to me. And I started feeling, I don't know if guilty is the right word, but almost like imposter syndrome was sneaking up. It was like, well, I need to be able to talk about these larger businesses on the podcast. Otherwise, I'm like this big fraud that doesn't actually know how to run a company. And it took me pretty much the month of January to kind of come to terms and remember the part of my business that I love, and that is keeping it small. That is being a solopreneur. So I did abandon this book. And I also kind of came into my own in terms of remembering that I am a solopreneur, and that is how I want to stay, and that it is by design. I could hire people, I could grow, and I've chosen not to. Not that my business hasn't grown, it certainly has financially. My income last year was higher than it's ever been. I've been making more money doing balloons than I have at my full-time job for the last 2 years. So it's not that I want to keep my business like confined. I just really enjoy keeping it small and figuring out how to like outsource and take things off my plate and work with subcontractors and hire bookkeepers who are experts in their field. So it is like my business is growing and that I'm hiring, just not in the way that this book was talking about. It was very much more like a company model where like your employees only work for you. And I realize I'm very much drawn towards more of an outsourcing subcontractor model. So I really did spend a lot of January just considering what type of business I was growing and also what type of podcast I was growing, because very easily I can spin out of control and all of a sudden I want to be everything for everybody. And then in doing so, you're not actually appealing to anybody because the information's just like all over the place. So what I've realized is that I am very much a solopreneur through and through. That is what I enjoy talking about. That's how I enjoy running my business. And that's really going to be the direction of the podcast moving forward. And I really think it has been from the start. It just took me reading kind of a stinker of a book to really realize what appeals to me and what doesn't. And the other thing that I've realized is that I think there's a gap in the balloon industry. From the time you start your business to the time you hire your team, that gap can be 6 months or that gap can be 25 years. And I think that is where I am, and that is what I love to talk about. This period of time where like you're kind of juggling everything, you're kind of wearing a lot of hats, you're trying to streamline, you're kind of like trying to figure things out. I love talking about stuff like that. And that is very much, I think, what the podcast started as and the direction it's going to continue to go. So much, in fact, that I'm actually planning a course that I'm going to launch in March, and it's going to be the laser-focused solopreneur. So if you have a small team, if you are a one-person operation, that is very much going to appeal to you. It's going to be talking about streamlining, automating, outsourcing, limiting, just making your business function as a large operation, but by keeping things really small and tight and buttoned up. So I'm really excited to focus on developing that framework and bringing that to you soon. But yeah, all of this to say, the whole big business book, the whole leadership team, all of that, it didn't interest me. So I abandoned the book and moved on to Chillpreneur, which hopefully you can tell from the title, it immediately appealed to me. I love running my business the way I like to run it. I like taking vacation whenever I want to, and this book is very much structured around that, but offers so much practical advice. Like I literally have probably 25 pages bookmarked, and I keep it in my purse. I read this a month ago, and I literally just keep it in my purse because when I have free time, I'll go back and reread it again. It almost reads as like a manual of how to run your business. So we are going to take a quick break after that very long-winded intro and then launch into Chillpreneur by Denise Duffield-Thomas. BalloonCoach.com has been a sponsor of The Bright Balloon since pretty much day one because, like this podcast, Balloon Coach focuses on growing your balloon business. I personally love Balloon Boss Mastermind because it is a group that constantly challenges me to grow my business, think about things in new ways, and I'm able to ask questions to other balloon business owners who usually have more experience than I do. From monthly webinars to in-person events and downloadable resources, BalloonCoach.com really has it all. So check out the link in the show notes wherever you're listening to learn more about BalloonCoach.com. Okay, let's talk about this book. One of my favorites. So Chillpreneur, the subtitle is The New Rules for Creating Success, Freedom, and Abundance on Your Terms. So again, she's like talking dirty to me. This is what I love. And the book reads kind of like a manual. I read it cover to cover, but like I said, I kind of keep it with me because there are sections that you can just turn to and reference. Like there's a whole chapter of scripts of like how to have awkward money conversations when you get an email and someone's like questioning your pricing or wants you to work for free. There's like word for word language that she includes so that you can actually like refer to that over and over. So really quick, I just want to give an overview. And in general, I would say this book is about like mindset, money, marketing, and then practical applications. It's a little bit woo-woo. Her other books are super woo-woo. So like they launch way more into like manifesting and dreaming and whatever. That's not a good explanation. But this one really is not. This one I found to be very, very practical. And the one thing I will say, it is very much written for women. So men, if you're listening, I still think that this book will appeal to you, but just know that her target audience is absolutely women, and there are a couple of chapters specifically geared towards that, especially the last chapter, which I'll talk about, which made me cry. But it is definitely a female-focused book. But other than that, all of her tips apply to everybody, but you should just know going in that it's definitely written through the lens of a female for a female. So I just want to go through and talk about a few of the things that really stood out to me. This isn't going to be like a Profit First when I did that book overview where there were like 5 steps and this is how you apply them, and it kind of read like an essay. This one's a little bit more all over the place, and I think if you gave this book to 5 different people, their standout items would all be different. Like there's so much in here, but I'm just going to talk about the things that stood out to me. So the first chapter that I got to that I was just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, is called The Keyless Life. And she's kind of coined this term, this idea of the keyless life, meaning that at her home, she hated like going through her purse and finding her keys. It was like a teeny tiny thing that annoyed her every single day, multiple times. So she got rid of it. She put her little keypads on all of her doors so that she never had to get her keys out of her purse. And then, with her car, you don't even have to put the key in anymore. So as long as her keys were in her purse, she basically eliminated that tiny annoying task from her day. And while that alone is a really practical tip, like we have keypads on our doors and it's amazing, it's kind of an idea to apply to all sorts of things in your life or your business. What are those really annoying little things that aren't that big of a deal, but if you just took a little bit of time, you could actually eliminate them altogether? So like for me, my CRM, 17 Hats, that does a lot of that for me. Like I get inquiries and it's really nice that I don't even have to respond. It's nice that my CRM responds immediately on my behalf. And it's kind of eliminated that entire task from my to-do list. Another thing that I just eliminated, people kept asking me for pricing. So finally, I made a pricing catalog and I just have that linked in all of my introductory emails. And that has eliminated that entire task, which it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long to send someone an email with a link in it. But like, why am I doing that over and over and over? Why can't I just eliminate that entire task from my day? So lots of examples in the book. The keypad thing is her main point, but she also references a lot of things around the house, like cleaning and outsourcing your meals. And the thing that I love about Denise Duffield-Thomas is that she very much connects your home life with your business life. And I think for solopreneurs, that's super true. Like there isn't a ton of separation between work and home. We're kind of juggling everything all at once. So if you can streamline your home life, like your housework and your meals and your grocery pickup, if you can make that all run really smoothly, that is just as valid as outsourcing something in your business, because at the end of the day, it's all on your plate anyway. So anything that you can take off is valuable. So that whole chapter about streamlining and outsourcing and just like making your life easy, I loved. I have almost every page dog-eared and I just keep going back and trying to implement little thing after little thing. Another thing, I can't even remember if it was in the book or in one of her podcasts. She just says like, think of something annoying and fix it. Like just resolve it. Something super tiny. Like for me, it was that my closet door didn't close. Like I would close it and it would kind of like open an inch. And I've lived in this home now for 6 months. And that has just been like always annoying and always on the bottom of my to-do list because it's not that significant of a struggle. But finally, I just like went to Home Depot, I bought a little latch and I screwed it on. It took me like 5 minutes and now my door closes and it makes the room look more put together. So the idea of just crossing one little annoying thing off of your mental list, it just improves how you feel about things. I started doing that in my balloon shop too. Like I have like little things that I struggle with. Like I kind of have my shop set up so like the place where I inflate air-filled balloons is on the other side of the room from like my helium tanks and ribbon. And I would always like lose the scissors. So I would go over to do helium balloons and then I would have ribbon pulled, but then I couldn't find scissors. And then I would have to like stretch Armstrong across the room to try to grab a pair of scissors. And it was like, why is this tiny little thing like a problem that I can't possibly solve? Like this is ridiculous. So I found a pair of scissors and I tied it to a string to my ribbon rack so I cannot take it anywhere else. Like it will always be there. And like That one little dumb thing has now saved me so much annoying, like mental frustration when I'm out there doing helium balloons. It's just like little stuff like that you can implement, takes almost no energy on the front end, but saves you just like so much frustration on the back end. So anything about streamlining or making life easy, I love, and this book is full of tips. All right, moving on to the money chapter. So much valuable information in this chapter. She talks about pricing mistakes. She talks about her own personal money mistakes, which I really appreciate. I mean, she's a freaking multimillionaire, but like she still talks about like she made merch with like her logo on it and no one bought it, and that was a huge mistake. Or it wasn't even a huge mistake, it just kind of was a distraction. Like I always say, my shiny object syndrome. I get distracted all the time. She talks about how a lot of times we just get distracted and we spend money on things that like don't even relate to our business. Like she's like, why am I trying to sell t-shirts when I'm a money coach? Like who cares? Why am I doing that? So the idea of just like cutting back on things that really don't relate to your business or make you money. Another thing that she talks about is working for trade. And she actually discourages people from doing that. She's like, listen, if you want to run a business, you need to exchange money. And like, what's the difference if you're working for trade and you're both working for free versus if you're both paying each other? She was like, there's just something powerful in paying for services. And I appreciate that. I do some stuff for trade, but I think that it can sometimes spiral out of control. And then she talks about awkward money conversations, which I really like. These were the scripts that I referenced before. She has actual written little scripts. And when I say script, it's not like a multi-page how to handle this. It's like a one-sentence blurb that you can pop into an email that just simplifies stuff that we like to make complicated. So like when someone asks for something for free, or when a repeat client asks for a discount, or when, your prices have been raised, how do you explain that to people? Like she has little one-liners that you can pop in there that just perfectly explain it and don't get emotional, and it just makes things easier. So I love that she put those little scripts and the words that we can actually take and use to make our lives easier. All right, next chapter about marketing. So this was where my face turned into the emoji with the hearts in the eyes. I loved this chapter because it was so simple and it was so straightforward. And for someone like me who is a people pleaser, it was something I needed to hear. And the two messages that I got out of the marketing chapter were that some people just aren't going to like you, and some people aren't going to want your services, which that alone is like a big pill for me to swallow. I'm like, oh, I want everyone to like me, and I want everyone to choose me for their balloons, and I want blah, blah, blah. Like I get in my head about that stuff, and it's terrible. So her point is like, just move on. There are more clients. There are always more clients, especially with what we do with balloons. You think of just like birthdays alone, literally everyone has one. So instead of getting caught up on like the one job you didn't get, just like move on, because the reasons of why they didn't choose you could be anything from like they chose their cousin, or they wanted a different style. They wanted to go a different direction. So for me, that was definitely a message I needed to hear, because I can definitely get in my own head. And then the other part that she mentioned was this 1% conversion rate, which again, is so simple and makes sense, but I've never really seen it written out. Basically, the idea is that of all the people you're trying to sell to, if they land on your sales page, probably about 1% of them are going to buy. And that is just the statistic across the board. Like that is her conversion rate. That is, the random person down the street's conversion rate. That is just human behavior. So for me, I sent out my pop drop email for New Year's Eve. And I sent it out to, I don't know, let's say my email list is 100 people. And I sold one. And I felt like, oh, what a bummer. Like no one wants these. I'm a huge loser. But then according to the 1% rule, I'm right on target. I ended up selling like 15 of them. But again, when you put it in perspective, it's like, yeah, why if I sent out an email to 100 people, would I expect 100 orders? Like that's insane. That is not how the world works. That is not how humans behave. Most of them probably deleted the email. Some of them maybe saw it and it wasn't a good time to buy. So this clicked with me for so many reasons. First of all, you need to send your stuff out more than one time, and you need to target people all over the place. So like Facebook, Instagram, you never know like when they're going to see your stuff and when they're going to click. And even in a perfect world, if everybody sees your marketing, still only 1% of them are going to buy. So for me, that was just like a great reminder. I guess it just kind of like brought me back down to earth. It manages my expectations when I'm selling. Even this podcast, if I send this email out to a bunch of people, I can see that only 30% open the email and then a much smaller percentage clicks on the episode. And again, because I'm a people pleaser, I'm like, oh, why didn't everybody click on the episode? But then according to this book, it's like I'm ahead of the curve. Like way more than 1% actually convert and listen to the episode. So like I should feel great about that instead of beating myself up. And I know I've had this conversation with so many people where we just can get so down on ourselves. We can beat ourselves up that like this flash sale didn't do great, or no one bought that, or nobody was interested in this special offer. And like really, when you look at it in terms of like 1% of your customers, you're probably actually doing pretty well. So she actually even gives like a chart in the book saying like, if you have this many email subscribers, this many of them will click on it and this many of them will buy. And she almost says it's like a party trick. Like people think she's just like so brilliant at estimating the numbers of like her launches and her sales. And she's like, it's not a trick. It's just simple math. Like this is the way it always works. So to me, again, that was encouraging to be like, yeah, actually I'm doing pretty well. So I like that she put that chart in there. And I like that she mentioned that like sometimes it has nothing to do with you, and that is okay. You just need to move on and find more clients. Another part of the money chapter that I really loved was this idea of speaking to your clients in money language. She said that people are more likely to click on an offer or work with you if you use money language. So I feel like in balloons, we use emotion a lot. We're pretty good at, instead of trying to sell balloons, we try to sell the emotion that balloons create. But she says instead of that emotion, you should tap into money language. So instead of, buy these balloons because they're cool, a better version would be like, buy these balloons because of the excitement it will bring your children. But then her recommendation is, let me do this work for you and save you the time and money of trying to create this yourself. She said people really relate to this money language, which again is new for me, and I'm still trying to kind of craft that specific language for balloons. But let me just read you a couple of examples from the book. So things to consider, she says, how do you help make or save your clients money? What is a priceless result that you can offer? So I see that one really relating to balloons. What does it cost your client not to work with you? So like that one, that's another cool way to think about balloons too. Like, especially in the corporate setting, like what is your time actually worth if you try to DIY these balloons? Like, let me provide that for you. And then there's several pages about how you can actually incorporate these phrases and this idea into your marketing, and this idea that people just really relate to it. If you are saving them time or money, it's really, really appealing to the average person. Okay, we are going to take a quick break, and then I am going to finish up and talk about the last chapter of the book, which made me cry on an airplane like a loser, but it really had an impact on me, and I'll tell you all about it. The number one question I receive is, where do I order my balloons? And that's why I'm excited to tell you about Having a Party Wholesale. Not only do I want to order from great people who really know the balloon industry, but I want a nice selection of products and a really good website. They have it all. Not only is their website easy to use, but it also has updated quantities on all of the products, so you know that what you're ordering is what you're going to get. They have super fast shipping, and even though they're in New York and I'm in Wisconsin, I always get my orders in just a few days. So check out Having a Party Wholesale in the show notes wherever you're listening for your next order, and make sure to tell them the Bright Balloon Podcast sent you. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about this last chapter. After what was a pretty practical book full of a lot of action steps, the last chapter is pretty sentimental, and it's titled Your Mission, and I'm just going to read the quote that's in here. My mission, should I choose to accept it, is to find peace with exactly who and what I am, to take pride in my thoughts, my appearance, my talents, my flaws, and to stop this incessant worrying that I can't be loved as I am. So again, this appeals to women more than men, but the idea of worrying and feeling like you're not ready or you're not prepared or you're not capable of running your own business, this whole chapter just talks about how that is just not acceptable, and that's all in our own heads, and we need to move past that fear. And then there is a really lovely passage in here about thinking about the generations of women that came before us. Our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, just a few generations ago, couldn't own their own businesses and certainly couldn't reach the masses like we can today with the internet. Like, we just have so much opportunity that the book basically says, don't waste it. Don't waste it by getting in your own head, by worrying that you're not ready, that you're not capable, that other people are better than you are. And this was the part that got me. It said, think about it through the lens of your grandma and your great-grandma. Like, they would be so proud of you. They would be so excited for the progress you've made and the progress you will make. And that anytime we worry, anytime we get in our own way, just think about how hard they had it and how excited and thrilled they would be for what we've accomplished. And again, I'm on an airplane, I'm crying. It's a really, really nice way to end this book and a really good lens for me personally to look through. Like I've said a million times, I get in my own head, I overthink, I sometimes convince myself that I'm not ready for something or good enough or capable. And when you put it through the lens of like the generations of women before us who had literally no opportunity, like that, it just puts everything in perspective, and it just makes all the stuff I worry about like not even a factor, not even a big deal. So with that, I know this episode was a bit all over the place, but so is this book, and that is why I love it. There is something in here for everybody. Again, it's Chillpreneur. We will link it in the show notes. It's by Denise Duffield-Thomas, and she also has a really great podcast. It's called Chill and Prosper, and a lot of resources out there available. So thanks for hanging in there for my first book review. Again, it was a lot, but we'll have many more to come. So see you next week, and thank you for tuning in.
That wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I tried to keep it bright and light in a few minutes or less. I'll talk to you next time. For more information about any of the resources or courses mentioned in today's show, please head to thebrightballoon.com or check the show notes wherever you're listening.